My hidden husband, Jiyu Jingchen, walked into my office with his childhood sweetheart and white moonlight, Suyu Mo. With a smile, he asked me, the design director, to mentor the new intern. Looking at the tenderness in his eyes that he couldn't hide, I suppressed all my grievances and submitted my resignation on the spot, announcing I was going abroad for further studies. He mocked me, saying I'd be worthless without him, but he had no idea that a single legal document from me would soon leave him wandering the streets. At 9:00 a.m. I had just arrived at the director's office of the Xingtu Motors Global Design Center when my assistant, Lin Wan, brought in coffee with a troubled look on her face. Director Shen, President Jiyu is here. He brought a young girl and said he wants to see you. I took the coffee, my fingertips pausing for a second. Jiyu Jingchen, my husband, the chairman and CEO of Xingtu Motors, and the man officially at the helm of this company. We had been married for 5 years, a hidden marriage for all 5. No one in the company knew that I, the design director who had won every international design award imaginable, was their chairman's legal wife. I looked up and spoke calmly. Let him in. Lin Wan nodded and left. Half a minute later, the office door was pushed open, and Jiyu Jingchen walked in. He was dressed in a high-end custom suit, his hair perfectly styled, wearing his usual practiced and polite smile. However, that smile held a trace of irrepressible tenderness when he looked at the girl beside him. The girl appeared to be in her early 20s, wearing a white dress with her hair in a high ponytail. Her eyes were round, filled with a timid, youthful air, and she gripped a sketchbook tightly in her hands. Jiyu Jingchen walked to my desk, reached out to pat the girl's shoulder, and smiled at me. Jiyu, let me introduce you. This is Suyu Mo, a recent graduate and intern. Her professional skills are quite impressive. I'm placing her in the design center. I want you to mentor her personally. My gaze fell on the girl's ID badge. It clearly read 3 words, Suyu Mo, Suyu Mo. I knew that name all too well. In Jiyu Jingchen's wallet, there was a permanent fixture, a yellowed old photograph of him as a teenager with a young girl in a ponytail. On the back it said, You Mo, my white moonlight. During our 5 years of marriage, he had called out that name countless times while drunk, countless times in the dead of night. He had typed out long, tender messages into a chat box addressed to that name. I had always pretended not to know, pretended not to care. I needed to stay by his side, to stay at Xingtu, to uncover the truth behind my father's death and reclaim everything that belonged to him. But I never expected him to be so brazen, to bring his white moonlight directly to me, place her under my nose, and demand I mentor her myself. I looked up at Jiyu Jingchen, my voice steady. The design center has HR and group leads to train interns. I don't have time for that. The smile on Jiyu Jingchen's face faded slightly. He took a step forward, leaning in close to me, and whispered in a voice only the two of us could hear, Jiyu, don't be ungrateful if I tell you to mentor her. You mentor her. Yu Mo is the person I hold dearest to my heart. Teach her well and don't give her any attitude, or else you know the consequences. His tone was thick with warning and threats, devoid of any respect for a wife. I looked at him and said nothing. At that moment, Suyu Mo took a step forward and bowed to me, her voice trembling slightly. Hello, Director Shen, my name is Suyu Mo. I admire you so much. You're my idol. Please give me a chance to learn. I'll work very hard and won't cause you any trouble. As she spoke, she opened her sketchbook and handed it to me. I glanced down and my pupils constricted. The exterior sketches in that book, the lines, the structure, the core design philosophy, were highly identical to the first drafts of our next-generation flagship model, which I had locked in an encrypted folder on my computer. Even the structural details I had sketched casually and hadn't yet resolved were identical. I had only stored those drafts on my encrypted office computer. Only Jiyu Jingchen and I knew the password. Because he was the chairman, I needed to sync research and development progress with him regularly, so I had granted him access. Now those drafts appeared in his childhood sweetheart sketchbook. I understood instantly. He wasn't just bringing her into the company, he was planning to steal my design work, to gild her reputation, letting her stand on my shoulders to become Xingtu's genius designer. I closed the sketchbook and looked at Suyu Mo, my voice flat. The sketches are good. Who taught you? Panic flashed in Suyu Mo's eyes. She instinctively looked at Jiyu Jingchen before quickly lowering her head and whispering, I came up with them myself. I stayed up for several nights to draw them. Jiyu Jingchen immediately stepped forward, putting his arm around Suyu Mo's shoulder. He looked at me, his face darkening. Jiyu, what do you mean by that? More is talented and hardworking. If you won't teach her, fine, but why use that tone to question her? I was just asking, I said, enunciating every word. Gu Jingchen, the design center has rules. Interns must start from foundational roles. I will not mentor her personally. If you want her to stay here, follow the rules, otherwise take her away. Gu Jingchen's face turned completely dark. He gritted his teeth and whispered, Shinjiu, don't forget that. Everything you have now was given to you by me. Without Xingtu, you are nothing. I ask you to mentor one person and you make excuses. Don't forget, we are husband and wife. My business is your business, husband and wife. I chuckled, looking at him. Gu Jingchen, what kind of husband makes his wife personally mentor his own white moonlight? Gu Jingchen's expression shifted instantly, a flash of panic in his eyes replaced quickly by ruthlessness. What nonsense are you talking about? More is just like a sister to me. We grew up together. Don't overthink it. I'm warning you, this isn't up for negotiation. She stays here and you mentor her. With that, he patted Suyumo's shoulder, his tone softening instantly. You stay here and learn from Director Shen. As long as I'm here, no one will dare bully you. Suyumo nodded, her eyes red as she whispered, Thank you, Brother Xian. Gu Jingchen gave me one last glare and walked out of the office. Only Suyumo and I were left. She stood there with her head down, appearing timid, yet there was a faint, nearly imperceptible glint of smugness in her eyes. I sat in my chair and said nothing. She looked up at me and suddenly smiled. Her voice was no longer shy, it carried a hint of provocation. Director Shen, Brother Xian said I'll be following you from now on. You better teach me well or he'll be angry. I looked at her, picked up the desk phone and dialed HR. Hello, Cha, place the new intern Suyumo in the basic modeling group. Follow the standard intern procedures, no special treatment. I hung up and looked at Suyumo coldly. My office is no place for you, get out. Suyumo's face turned pale instantly. She gritted her teeth, glared at me and ran out of the office. As the door closed, I leaned back in my chair and stared out the window. 5 years. My father, Shen Hongyuan, the founder of Xingtu Motors and a top-tier domestic automotive designer, died in a car accident 5 years ago. After his death, Gu Jingchen, his son-in-law, took the opportunity to buy up minority shares at a low price, becoming the chairman and stealing my father's life's work. And I, in order to uncover the truth behind the accident, married Gu Jingchen. I stayed at Xingtu under the title of design director for 5 years, collecting evidence bit by bit. In those 5 years, I used my talent to pull a near-bankrupt Xingtu back to the top of the industry, making Gu Jingchen a star entrepreneur in the new energy sector. He enjoyed all the wealth and honor my designs brought him, yet he turned around to bring his white moonlight to my face, even attempting to steal my designs to pave her way. I looked at the encrypted drafts on my computer and tapped my finger on the desk. Gu Jingchen, Suyumo, your game has begun, but I'm done playing my part. Just then, my phone chimed. It was an email from the Milan International Design Week Committee, officially inviting me to serve as the head judge for this year's global automotive design competition and to give a keynote speech. I looked at the email and smiled. It was time to leave. A week later, the design review for Xingtu Motors' next-generation flagship model was held in the main conference room at headquarters. The room was packed with senior executives, the core design team and shareholder representatives. As the director of the design center, I sat at the head of the table with the review materials in hand. Gu Jingchen sat next to me in the chairman's seat, his eyes drifting toward the door with clear anticipation. I knew what he was waiting for. He was waiting for Suyumo. During the past week, Suyumo hadn't spent a second on basic work in the modeling group. She spent every day running to Gu Jingchen's office. Rumors were flying through the company that this new intern was the CEO's darling. Meanwhile, Gu Jingchen had claimed on several public occasions that Suyumo was a gifted design prodigy who had brought fresh ideas to Xingtu. The review meeting officially began. Just as the moderator finished the opening remarks, Gu Jingchen raised his hand to interrupt. He smiled and said, "Before we start today's review, let's add a special segment. We have a very talented newcomer in our design center who has brought a brand new design proposal for the flagship model. I think it's quite brilliant, so let's have her present it to everyone first." Whispers broke out across the room. Everyone knew the next flagship model was Xingtu's core project for the next 3 years and that I had been leading the development. For Jiyu Jingchen to suddenly let a new intern present a design was a blatant slap in my face. I sat in my chair, expressionless and silent. Jiyu Jingchen waved toward the door and said with a smile, "You more come in." The conference room doors swung open, and Su Yumore stepped inside. She was dressed in a sleek professional suit, her makeup was flawless, and she carried a USB drive with an air of confidence, completely devoid of the timidness she had shown just a week ago. She walked straight to the podium, plugged in her drive, and a vehicle exterior design proposal instantly filled the large screen behind her. The moment the proposal appeared, the room fell into a heavy silence. Every head in the room turned toward me in unison. This design, from the exterior lines and body structure to the interior layout and core philosophy, was nearly identical to the draft of the next-generation flagship model I had presented to the core team during last week's internal R&D meeting. Even the structural details I had marked as unresolved were copied untouched into her proposal. The only difference was the signature. On the project, Su Yumore held the microphone. Standing on the podium and delivering a passionate explanation of the design, she spoke with vivid detail, claiming the work I had spent countless sleepless nights on was her own original result achieved over months of labor. When she finished, she gave a graceful bow and shot me a triumphant look. The room remained deathly quiet. Everyone looked from Jiyu Jingchen to me. No one dared to breathe. Suddenly, Jiyu Jingchen broke the silence by leading the applause. "Brilliant, absolutely brilliant, a true stroke of genius," he exclaimed. "Yumore may be a newcomer, but her talent far exceeds that of many veteran designers. This proposal completely exceeds my expectations and perfectly fits the positioning of our next flagship model." As he clapped, he looked toward the executives, taking the cue. They quickly followed suit, filling the room with a scattering of forced applause. Jiyu Jingchen looked at me with a smirk. "Jiyu, what do you think of Yumore's proposal? Isn't it full of highlights?" I stared back at him and said nothing. His smile widened as he announced to the room, "I've decided that Su Yumore will serve as the lead designer for the next-generation flagship model. This proposal is officially approved as the final design, and we will begin immediate development." The room erupted. An intern of 1 week leading Xingtu's most critical project, using a design that was a carbon copy of the director's draft. It was a blatant move to boost his white moonlight by handing her my hard-earned results on a silver platter. The associate director of design couldn't help but speak up. "President Jiyu, is this appropriate? This is our core project. Su Yumore is an intern with 0 project experience, and this proposal is remarkably similar to Director Shen's draft." "What about Director Shen's draft?" Jiyu Jingchen interrupted sharply, his face darkening. "It's normal for design philosophies to overlap. Is Director Shen the only one allowed to have good ideas? I think you're getting old and confused." The associate director shut his mouth instantly. Jiyu Jingchen turned back to me with a provocative smile. "Director Shen, do you have a problem with my decision?" I stood up, straightened my blazer, and slowly walked onto the stage. Seeing me approach, Su Yumore's face flickered with panic and she instinctively took a step back. I picked up the microphone, my voice ringing clearly through the hall. "This proposal indeed has 3 core highlights, or rather 3 unresolved structural flaws that only the original creator would know about." I gestured for the staff to switch the slide and pointed to the body structure on the screen. "First, this A-pillar angle sacrificed collision safety for the sake of sleek lines. A car built this way would never pass a 5-star safety rating, let alone meet national mandatory standards for a 25% small overlap crash. Second, the battery pack layout to maximize interior space. The crash protection structure for the battery was compressed in a side impact collision. The battery would easily short-circuit and catch fire. It's a massive safety hazard. Third, the center console structure. It doesn't match the dimensions of the hardware components. Following this design, the hardware simply won't fit. It's a theoretical design that's impossible to manufacture." I paused and looked at the now ashen Su Yumore. "Intern Su, did you leave these 3 core flaws in the design on purpose? How do you plan to solve them?" Su Yumore stood frozen, trembling, her lips quivered, but she couldn't utter a single word. She had only stolen my draft. She had no understanding of the logic behind the engineering, let alone how to fix the flaws. "What? No answer?" I continued. I thought you said this was your original work from months of effort. How can you not explain the core issues of your own design? Su Yumor burst into tears, looking at Jiyu Jingchen. Brother Xian, she sobbed. Jiyu Jingchen slammed his hand on the table and stood up. Shinjiyu, enough, they're just minor issues, we can just fix them. Is it really necessary to bully a newcomer like this in public? Minor issues. I laughed. Jiyu Jingchen, these are cars, machines that carry lives on the road. You think safety is a minor issue. You're willing to disregard the lives of consumers just to prop up your white moonlight. I signaled the technician to switch the slides again, the screen filled with my original hand-drawn sketches, each page clearly time-stamped, starting from 6 months ago. Then came the meeting logs and video recordings of me explaining this exact proposal to the core team months prior. It was a comprehensive record of the creative process. Everyone, I said, looking at the crowd, this design was the result of 6 months of work by my team and me. It was never made public. The reason in turn Su can present a proposal identical to my draft, even copying the flaws I hadn't yet resolved, is something I think you can all figure out for yourselves. The room fell into an uproar. Disdainful glances were thrown at Jiyu Jingchen and Su Yumor. It was obvious now, Su Yumor wasn't a prodigy, she was a thief, and the only person who could have given her my encrypted files was Jiyu Jingchen. Jiyu Jingchen's face turned from red to white. He stood there shaking, pointing a finger at me but unable to speak. I reached into my briefcase and placed a document on the table in front of him. Jiyu Jingchen, this is my resignation, effective immediately. I am stepping down from all positions at the Xingtu Motors Global Design Center. Jiyu Jingchen stared at me, eyes wide. Shinjiyu, what did you say, you're resigning? Yes, I replied firmly. And not just that, I am formally notifying you of the termination of our marriage. My lawyer will deliver the divorce papers to you. With that, I grabbed my briefcase and turned to leave. Jiyu Jingchen rushed over and grabbed my wrist, his eyes burning with malice. Shinjiyu, have you lost your mind? Without Xingtu, without me, you are nothing. Your designs will never see the light of day without this platform. He let out a cold, confident laugh. I'm telling you, if you walk out that door, you'll regret it. Within 3 months, you'll be on your knees begging to come back. I shoved his hand away and smiled. Jiyu Jingchen, the only one who will regret this is you. I walked out of the conference room without a second glance behind me. The meeting descended into chaos. I knew Jiyu Jingchen wouldn't let this go. He would use every resource to blackball me and force me to submit, but he had no idea that I had already prepared everything. His industry ban meant nothing to me. The blacklist came the very next morning at 8:00 am. My assistant Lin WN called, her voice frantic. Director Shen, it's bad. President GU issued an industry-wide ban. He's claiming you were fired for stealing trade secrets. He's told every car company and design firm in the country that anyone who hires or works with you is an enemy of Xingtu Motors. I leaned against my headboard, calm. I expected as much. There's more, Lin WN added. He froze all your project bonuses and dividends. He's withholding your employment separation certificate. He even filed with the patent office, claiming all your designs were work for hire and belong to Xingtu, requesting a freeze on your commercial licenses. Understood, I said. Jiyu Jingchen's favorite tactic was using capital to crush people. He thought that by blocking my path in the domestic market, I'd be forced to crawl back to him. I hung up, showered, and got dressed just as I headed downstairs. The doorbell rang. Jiyu Jingchen stood at the door. He was wearing a black trench coat, his hair was messy, and his eyes were bloodshot. He reeked of alcohol. He clearly hadn't slept. He pushed his way into the house and slammed the door, looking at me with a mix of fury and desperation. Shinjiyu, you really did it, resigning, divorcing. You're hell-bent on going against me, aren't you? I took a step back to maintain my distance. Jiyu Jingchen, we have nothing left to say. My lawyer will handle the divorce. Please leave. Leave, where would I go? He laughed maniacally. You've turned my life upside down, and now you want me to just leave? Not a chance. He stepped closer, his tone shifting between coaxing and threatening. Jiyu, I know you're just angry because I brought you more into the company. I'm sorry, I'll make her leave. I'll never see her again, okay? Just come back to Xingtu, be the director again. We'll stay married, everything will go back to how it was. I'll lift the ban and give you back your patents. What do you say? No, I said, looking him straight in the eye. It's too late, Jiyu Jingchen. Too late. Jiyu Jingchen's face darkened instantly. He grabbed my arm, his voice harsh. Shinjiyu, don't push your luck. Do you really think anyone else will hire you once you leave me in Xingtu? I'm telling you, not a single car manufacturer in China will dare to work with you. Without the platform of Xingtu, your designs are nothing but scrap paper. You'll never see one of your designs hit the production line for the rest of your life. Is that so? I chuckled and shook off his grip. I picked up the tablet from the table, opened an email and held it up to his face. The email was from the Milan Design Week Organizing Committee. It was a formal invitation for me to serve as the chief judge for this year's global automotive design competition and to be the keynote speaker at the main venue. At the bottom of the email were joint invitations from the design directors of top global automotive groups, Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz, all expressing their desire to collaborate with me. As Jiyu Jingchen read the email, his arrogance froze, his pupils contracted sharply as if he couldn't believe his eyes. He thought his blacklist could starve me out. He didn't realize that my designs had long since crossed borders, carving out a place for me in the international design community. His ban might carry weight in small domestic circles, but in the global arena it was utterly irrelevant. Jiyu Jingchen's face flushed, then turned pale. He stared at me. Speechless for a long time, I pulled the tablet back and looked at him coldly. Look closely, Jiyu Jingchen, it's not that I can't leave Xingtu, it's that Xingtu can't survive without me, without my designs. Xingtu is nothing. Now get out of my house immediately or I'm calling the police. Jiyu Jingchen glared at me, his eyes filled with resentment and spite. He gritted his teeth and said, "Don't get ahead of yourself, Shinjiyu Milan. I'll see what kind of waves you can actually make abroad. You'll regret this, I promise." With that, he shot me one last hateful look and slammed the door behind him. I walked to the window and watched his car speed away. I felt nothing regret. I had waited 5 years for this day. How could I possibly regret it? That afternoon, I contacted a real estate agent to list the apartment, the marital home Jiyu Jingchen and I shared, for sale. Then I booked a flight to Milan for 3 days later. Lin WN called me saying she had also resigned from Xingtu and wanted to follow me to Milan as my assistant. I agreed with a smile. 3 days later, at Pudong International Airport, I was heading toward security with my suitcase when Lin WN checked her phone. "President Shen, President Jiyu found out you're going to Milan. He's putting it out there that you're just fleeing the heat and that you'll come crawling back to him within 3 months." Totally defeated, I just smiled and said nothing. He would never understand that what trapped him wasn't the Xingtu platform but his own narrow vision and selfish heart. He thought I was running away, but I was heading toward a wider world to take back everything that belonged to me. Lin WN and I passed through security and boarded the flight to Milan. As the plane accelerated down the runway and soared into the sky, I looked at the shrinking city below without a hint of nostalgia. Jiyu Jingchen, Suyu Mo, see you in Milan. When the time comes, I'll show you what true design looks like and what true despair feels like. And as for Xingtu Motors without me, you'll soon see just how fast it plunges into the abyss. Milan Design Week is the pinnacle of the global design world, often called the Oscars of design. Every year, it attracts top designers, car manufacturers, and brands from across the globe. It is the most authoritative and high-profile stage in the industry. Upon arriving in Milan, I immediately dove into the preparations. As the chief judge of the global automotive design competition, I needed to review all entries and prepare my keynote speech. Lin WN walked into my studio holding the list of contestants, a mocking look on her face. "President Shen, guess whose name I saw on the list?" I looked up. "Suyu Mo." "Exactly." Lin WN placed the list in front of me. "Not just her but the entry itself. It's your Wind Blade series, the one that won you your first Red Dot Award." She renamed it Morning Light, changed the color, and had the nerve to submit it as it is. I smiled, not the least bit surprised. If Suyu Mo could steal my rough drafts, she could steal my past award-winning work. And for her to dare bring my work to Milan, Jiyu Jingchen had to be the one backing her. He clearly wanted to use the Milan stage to gold-plate Suyu Mo, turning her into an internationally renowned prodigy while simultaneously slapping my face to prove that I was nothing without him. "There's more," Lin WN continued. "I found out Jiyu Jingchen is in Milan too. He brought a team from Xingtu and even tried to bribe a few judges to guarantee the gold award for Suyu Mo." "Oh," I arched an eyebrow. "He's certainly willing to spend the money. Tell me about it." Lin WN said indignantly. He wants to step on you to boost his white moonlight. President Shen, what should we do? We can't just let him parade your work around the international stage as a fraud. I put down my pen and smiled at her. Don't worry, if he wants to use Milan to polish her reputation, I'll make sure he faces total social death in front of the entire global design community. I had anticipated this move before coming to Milan. I had prepared all the evidence for the Windblade design. I didn't just have the original sketches and copyright registrations. I had the original Red Dot Trophy official archives and certificates. Everything proved I was the sole creator. They were walking straight into a trap. 3 days later, the final review session of the competition was held at the main venue. The hall was packed with top designers, automotive executives, and journalists. The event was being live-streamed globally. As the chief judge, I sat in the center seat of the panel, surrounded by titans of the design world. The session began smoothly as contestants presented their work. Finally, it was Su Yumo's turn. When the host announced her name and the entry morning light, Su Yumo walked onto the stage in a high-fashion gown and heels, looking brimming with confidence. Jiyu Jingchen followed behind her, dressed in a custom suit with a smug, triumphant smile. He held Xingtu's promotional brochures, clearly intending to capitalize on the moment. All eyes were on them. Su Yumo bowed to the audience and began introducing Morning Light in broken English. Behind her, the screen displayed the design. Aside from the body color, it was identical to my Windblade. She read from her script with forced emotion, recounting my original creative process as if it were her own. When she finished, there was a smattering of applause. The two judges Jiyu Jingchen had bribed immediately began their praise, calling it visionary and flawless, and gave it perfect scores. Other judges frowned. The work looked familiar, but they couldn't quite place it. Su Yumo stood on stage, beaming with pride, throwing a provocative glance my way. Jiyu Jingchen looked at me mockingly as if to say, "See, your work is now her glory. What can you do about it?" The host turned to me. "Now we invite our chief judge Ms. Shinjiyu to give her evaluation." The cameras panned to me. The room went silent. I picked up the microphone. My voice was clear, echoing through the speakers and the live stream. "First, I'd like to thank the contestant Su Yumo for allowing me to see my own design from 10 years ago once again on this Milan stage." The room erupted. People turned to look at Su Yumo and Jiyu Jingchen in shock. Su Yumo's smile vanished. She turned deathly pale, her body trembling. Jiyu Jingchen's expression shifted instantly. He barked, "Shinjiyu, what nonsense are you talking? This is Yumo's original work. Don't you dare slander her." I ignored him and signaled the staff to switch the screen. The screen was suddenly filled with my original sketches for the Windblade series from 10 years ago, each page clearly time-stamped. I followed it with the Red Dot Best of the Best certificate, official archival documents, and global copyright registrations. It was undeniable I was the sole creator, and the work dated back a decade. When Su Yumo was still just a child, the venue turned into a chaotic buzz. Reporters swarmed, their flashes creating a blinding wall of light. The Windblade design was my 2016 graduation project. I continued into the MIC. It was the work that won me the Red Dot Luminary Award. Design schools worldwide use it as a classic case study in automotive design. Ms. Su Yumo changed the color from black to white, didn't move a single line, and had the audacity to claim it as her own. In my 15 years in this industry, I have never seen such blatant plagiarism. I paused, looking at the trembling Su Yumo. "Ms. Su, since you claim this is your original work, let me ask you, what was your target drag coefficient for this design? What were the final wind tunnel test results? What is the percentage of high-strength steel in the body structure? These are the core technical details that only the true creator would know." Su Yumo stood there, her lips quivering, unable to utter a word. Tears streamed down her face. She was paralyzed. The audience saw her reaction and knew the truth. Hissing and jeers broke out. I looked at the chairman of the organizing committee. "Mr. Chairman, in light of this plagiarism, I am submitting full evidence of my authorship. I request the committee to disqualify Su Yumo and blacklist her from the global design community, banning her from all future events." The chairman nodded solemnly. He took the microphone. After on-site verification by the panel, the entry by Su Yumo is found to be a severe case of plagiarism, violating both competition rules and professional ethics. I hereby announce the immediate disqualification of Su Yumore and her permanent blacklisting from the global design industry. Furthermore, Xingtu Motors, as her sponsoring organization, is permanently banned from all future Milan Design Week activities. The verdict was final. The hall erupted in thunderous applause. Su Yumore's legs gave out, and she collapsed on stage, sobbing into her hands. Jiyu Jingchen stood frozen, his face ashen, shaking as the weight of the global humiliation hit him. He hadn't just failed to gold-plate Su Yumore, he had turned himself and Xingtu Motors into a worldwide laughingstock. He gritted his teeth, shot me a venomous look and tried to bolt. However, he was stopped by security for his earlier outbursts. He was dragged out of the hall, looking utterly pathetic. Su Yumore was also escorted away. The session resumed, and order was quickly restored. By the time it ended, major global media outlets were already reporting the story. Headlines like "Chinese designer exposes plagiarist at Milan Design Week" and "Xingtu Motors permanently banned from Milan" went viral globally and topped the trending lists. Back home, domestic netizens were furious, accusing Jiyu Jingchen and Su Yumore of embarrassing the nation on the world stage. Xingtu Motors' stock price plummeted instantly, hitting the downward limit. Lin Wn showed me her phone, ecstatic. "President Shen, that was so satisfying. Jiyu Jingchen and Su Yumore are finished. They're like rats crossing the street now. Everyone wants to hit them." I smiled quietly. This was only the beginning. Jiyu Jingchen thought he could step on me to climb higher in Milan. He didn't realize this was my home turf. The face he lost here was just the tip of the iceberg. Soon, he would realize that without my patent licenses, Xingtu Motors wouldn't even have the right to exist. After Milan Design Week concluded, I didn't return home immediately. Several top-tier global automakers, including BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Volkswagen, had extended invitations for deep design collaborations or even to join their global design centers. I stayed in Milan to engage in detailed negotiations with their respective heads of design. Back in China, Jiyu Jingchen had completely lost it. The social death incident in Milan had turned him and Xingtu Motors into industry laughingstocks. Their stock price plummeted continuously, wiping out over 10 billion in market value. He pinned every ounce of his resentment on me. A week later, I received a call from my domestic lawyer. He informed me that Jiyu Jingchen had filed a lawsuit with the Beijing Intellectual Property Court. He was suing me for infringing on Xingtu Motors' trade secrets, claiming that the 17 core design patents in my possession were work-for-hire inventions created during my tenure at Xingtu. He demanded the court transfer the patent rights to Xingtu and sought 50 million renminbi in damages. Lin Wn trembled with rage upon hearing the news. Jiyu Jingchen is utterly shameless. You applied for those patents long before you even joined Xingtu. How dare he claim they're work-for-hire inventions just to steal them? I simply smiled. Not at all surprised. Jiyu Jingchen was backed into a corner. Xingtu's core models relied entirely on my patented designs. Now that I had terminated their authorization, his cars were facing an immediate sales ban. His only lifeline was to seize ownership of my patents. That's why he filed this suit, hoping the court would rule them as company property under the guise of work for hire. What he didn't realize was that I had prepared for this from the very beginning. I spoke calmly into the phone. "Attorney Zhong, submit all the evidence we prepared to the court. At the same time, file a countersuit against Xingtu Motors for patent infringement, seeking 200 million renminbi in damages." "Understood, President Shen. I'll get on it immediately," Zhong replied. After hanging up, Lin Wn looked at me with concern. "President Shen, can we win this? Jiyu Jingchen has deep connections domestically. What if he plays dirty?" "Don't worry," I looked at her and smiled. "Patent ownership isn't decided by connections, it's decided by evidence. My evidence is rock solid. He can't win." Half a month later, the Beijing Intellectual Property Court officially opened the trial. I flew back to attend the hearing. The courtroom was packed, journalists squeezed into the gallery, and many of Xingtu's shareholders were present. Jiyu Jingchen sat at the plaintiff's bench, his expression grim, his eyes full of venom as he glared at me. His lawyer stood up, holding the complaint, and argued eloquently. "Your Honor, my client Xingtu Motors is the rightful owner of these 17 patents. The defendant, Shen Jiyu, completed the research and development of these patents using the company's funds, equipment, and resources while serving as the director of the Global Design Center. According to the patent law, the rights to work-for-hire inventions belong to the employer. We request the court to award ownership to the plaintiff and order the defendant to pay 50 million renminbi in economic losses. He then submitted a mountain of evidence, including my employment contract, job certification, and Xingtu's R&D expenditure logs, attempting to prove the patents were created using company resources. The judge turned to me. "Defendant, you may present your defense." I stood up, took the documents my lawyer handed me, and spoke calmly. "Your Honor, I reject all of the plaintiff's claims. These 17 patents are my personal inventions and do not constitute work for hire. The ownership belongs to me. The plaintiff's claims have no basis in fact or law." I gestured to my lawyer to submit the first set of evidence. The first set of evidence includes the patent certificates, application records, and filing notices for all 17 patents. They clearly show that the application dates for every single patent precede my employment at Xingtu. The earliest application dates back to 2016, while I joined Xingtu in 2019. In other words, these patents were already filed and authorized before I ever stepped foot in the company. It was physically impossible for them to be work-for-hire inventions. The judge reviewed the documents and nodded at the plaintiff's bench. Jiyu Jingchen's face turned ashen. He never expected that I had filed for all those patents before even meeting him. I continued. The second set of evidence is the patent licensing agreement I signed with Xingtu Motors. The agreement explicitly states that I am the sole legal owner and only granted Xingtu a non-exclusive, domestic commercial license. Xingtu holds the right to use the patents, not own them. This agreement bears Xingtu's official seal and Jiyu Jingchen's personal signature. It is legally binding. I had insisted on this agreement when I first joined. Back then, Jiyu Jingchen didn't care about the fine print. He just saw me as a talented designer who could boost his sales. He signed it without a second thought. Now that agreement was the loudest slap to his face. Jiyu Jingchen sat there trembling, his face pale as a sheet. I paused, then drove the point home. The plaintiff claims I used company resources, but since the applications predated my employment, that claim is moot. On the contrary, Xingtu Motors has used my patents without authorization in several models not covered by the licensing agreement, generating over 2 billion renminbi in profit. This constitutes gross patent infringement. I looked the judge in the eye. Therefore, I am officially filing a countersuit. I request the court to order Xingtu Motors to cease all infringing activities, stop the sale of all infringing models, and compensate me for economic losses totaling 200 million RMB. My lawyer submitted the countersuit evidence, comprehensive sales records and revenue logs of the infringing models. The evidence was irrefutable. The courtroom erupted. The shareholders in the gallery began shouting, their eyes burning with fury toward Jiyu Jingchen. They finally realized that not only had he failed to steal the patents, but he had also invited a 200 million RMB disaster. Xingtu was finished. Jiyu Jingchen suddenly bolted upright, pointing at me. "Shenjiyu, you're lying. You tricked me into signing that. You used Xingtu's resources to refine those designs. This is blackmail." The judge slammed the gavel. "Plaintiff, maintain order. You are not permitted to speak without leave." Jiyu Jingchen slumped back down, his eyes filled with desperate spite. The trial lasted 3 hours. After evidence was presented and debated, the judge delivered the verdict on the spot. After deliberation, this court finds that the 17 patents in question were applied for and authorized before the defendant joined the plaintiff's company. They are not work-for-hire inventions. Ownership belongs solely to Shenjiyu. The plaintiff's claims are dismissed. Regarding the countersuit, this court finds that Xingtu Motors used the defendant's patents without authorization in multiple production models, constituting infringement. Xingtu Motors is hereby ordered to cease all infringing activities immediately and pay the defendant 200 million renminbi in damages within 10 days of this judgment. The gavel struck. Final. Jiyu Jingchen collapsed into his chair looking like a dead man walking. He hadn't just lost the patents, he owed 200 million, he had lost everything. I looked at him without a shred of emotion. This was his reckoning. If you try to steal someone's soul, you pay the price when you fail to carry it away. As I left the court, reporters swarmed me. I offered a simple statement: I respect the court's decision. Intellectual property is not to be trifled with. Then, flanked by my lawyer and security, I departed in the car. Lin Wn was ecstatic. President Shen, we did it, eh? Total victory. Jiyu Jingchen is ruined. With Xingtu's current state, they can't afford 200 million. They'll have to file for bankruptcy. I smiled but stayed silent. I knew Jiyu Jingchen wouldn't go down quietly. Driven to the edge, he would do something reckless. Sure enough, 3 days later, I got word that Jiyu Jingchen had privately contacted our biggest domestic competitor, Hongqi Auto. He sold them the core design data for my unreleased next-generation flagship model in exchange for 50 million renminbi in cash and a vice president position. He intended to use that money to pay the court settlement and partner with Hongqi to launch his new design, effectively crushing me and what was left of Xingtu. He didn't know I had anticipated this move. I had laid a massive trap, waiting for him and Hongqi to jump in together. 2 months later, the Shanghai International Auto Show opened. It was the largest and most prestigious event in the country, the primary battlefield where automakers revealed their flagship models. On the first day, Hongqi Auto took over the largest hall for a grand global launch. Hundreds of media outlets were there, live streaming the event. I arrived with Lin Wan, standing quietly in the crowd, watching the stage. Hongqi's CEO, Mr. Wang, stood on stage looking triumphant. Today, Hongqi Auto brings a revolutionary all-electric flagship to the world, the Hongqi ME7, developed over 3 years by our top design team. It features world-leading aesthetics and architecture. It is the dark horse of this year's show. As he spoke, an image of the ME7 flashed onto the giant screen. The crowd gasped, reporters and spectators went wild, snapping photos and whispering frantically. The Hongqi ME7, from its silhouette and structural frame to the headlight clusters and interior layout, even down to the wheel rims, was an exact replica of my unreleased flagship design. Aside from the badge, it was identical. I stood in the crowd watching Mr. Wang. I didn't blink. Clearly, Jiyu Jingchen had sold the data in its entirety, and Hongqi, holding stolen goods, was parading them as their own original Rand D, hoping to skyrocket to fame on the back of my work. On stage, Mr. Wang noticed the buzz. Instead of backing down, he grinned. I know many of you are stunned. This is Hongqi's original design, a ceiling-level achievement for the industry. I dare say that after today, every EV maker in China will be following our lead. He paused, his voice turning mocking. Unlike certain companies that can't even launch a new car because they lost their designer and are on the brink of bankruptcy, it's quite pathetic, really. Everyone knew he was talking about Xingtu and me. The crowd erupted in laughter, and Hongqi's employees began to clap. Mr. Wang's smile deepened as he prepared to continue detailing the vehicle's specifications. I pushed through the crowd and calmly walked onto the stage. The hall fell silent instantly. Every eye in the building fixed on me. Cameras and livestream lenses pivoted toward me in an instant. Seeing me approach, Mr. Wang's grin froze. Shinjiyu, what are you doing here? This is a Hongqi launch event. It's no place for you. Security, get her out of here. 2 guards moved to intervene, but I stopped them with a raised hand. I picked up a microphone from the stage and addressed the audience. My voice rang out clearly across the pavilion and through the live streams to the entire internet. Mr. Wang, don't be in such a hurry to kick me out. I came up here today to ask you one thing. You claim this Hongqi ME7 is an original design that took Hongqi 3 years to develop, correct? Mr. Wang's expression darkened. Of course, this is an original Hongqi design. Shinjiyu, don't you dare cause trouble here. Is that so? I smiled and gestured to my staff. The giant screen on stage flickered and changed. Suddenly, my WeChat chat history and email correspondence with Jiyu Jingchen appeared on the screen, followed by his logs with Mr. Wang and bank transfer records. It was a crystal-clear trail documenting how Jiyu Jingchen had sold the complete design data and 3D modeling files of my next-generation flagship model to Mr. Wang and Hongqi Auto for 50 million RMB. The timing, the amounts and the transaction records were all there, irrefutable, rock-solid evidence. The venue erupted. The audience was stunned, staring at Mr. Wang on stage with looks of utter contempt and shock. Mr. Wang turned deathly pale. He pointed at me, his voice trembling. You're talking nonsense. This is all forged. You're maliciously slandering Hongqi. I ignored him and continued. Switching the content on the screen. The screen now displayed the full copyright registration certificates for this design package, registered a year ago. along with my original design sketches and the creation timestamps of the 3D modeling files. Every record of creation predated Hunk's claimed RAND D period by a significant margin. I spoke into the mic, articulating every word. To our friends in the media and the audience, the design for the Hongqi ME7 is an original work that I led my team to complete over the course of a year. It has never been made public. Hongqi Auto used illegal means to purchase my design data from Jiyu Jingchen and shamelessly copied it for their production model. By claiming it as an original design, they have not only infringed on my copyright but have also committed massive commercial fraud. I paused and turned to look at the pale Mr. Wang beside me. Mr. Wang, you just said this car took 3 years of original RAND D, then let me ask you, what is the target value for the body's torsional stiffness? What technical solution are you using for the battery pack's CTP structure? And what protocol did you define for the hardware interfaces of the smart cockpit? These were core technical details of automotive design, things only the true creator could answer accurately. Mr. Wang stood there shaking, his lips quivering, unable to utter a single word for a long time. He had only bought the aesthetic data, he had no understanding of the core technicalities, let alone the ability to answer. A wave of boos erupted from the crowd. Everyone realized that Hongqi Auto was guilty of blatant plagiarism. They had stolen someone else's work and had the audacity to hold a grand launch event. It was utter shamelessness. Media reporters went into a frenzy, their cameras flashing non-stop at Mr. Wang. The livestream comments section exploded as netizens slammed Hongqi for their lack of ethics and called for a total boycott of their vehicles. I looked at Mr. Wang and continued, Mr. Wang, you and Hongqi Auto have used stolen designs to deceive consumers and infringe on my intellectual property. I have already filed a lawsuit with the Shanghai Intellectual Property Court. Furthermore, I have reported Hongqi Auto's commercial fraud to the National Intellectual Property Administration and the State Administration for Market Regulation. All relevant evidence has been submitted. I set the microphone down and looked out at the crowd. I stand here today not just to protect my own IP but to tell everyone that original design is not to be plagiarized and intellectual property is not to be violated. Anything built on theft will never go far. Thunderous applause broke out. Many in the audience shouted, "Support Director Shen," and "Boycott the copycats." I turned and walked off the stage. Mr. Wang remained frozen in place, his launch event completely ruined and the scene descending into chaos. By that afternoon, hashtags like #HongqiAuto exposed by original creator and #Jiyu Jingchen leaking trade secrets shot to the top of the trending lists. The entire internet was condemning Hongqi and Jiyu Jingchen. Hongqi's stock price plummeted 20% that day, wiping out billions in market value. Countless consumers cancelled their pre-orders, and dealerships began collective legal action to terminate their contracts. In a desperate move, Hongqi Auto sued Jiyu Jingchen for commercial fraud, demanding the return of the 50 million renminbi and compensation for their massive economic losses. Meanwhile, Jiyu Jingchen's act of leaking trade secrets had crossed into criminal territory. I had already synchronized all evidence with the Public Security Bureau and the China Securities Regulatory Commission, CSRC. The police soon opened a formal criminal investigation into Jiyu Jingchen for infringing on trade secrets. The CSRC also launched an investigation into Xingtu Motors for information disclosure violations. Jiyu Jingchen had officially become a pariah, loathed by everyone. Lin Wan showed me her phone, beaming with excitement. "President Shen, this is so satisfying. Hongqi and Jiyu Jingchen are completely finished. Jiyu Jingchen is facing massive lawsuits and a police manhunt. He has nowhere to run." I smiled but said nothing. Jiyu Jingchen had chosen this path. He repeatedly crossed the line, stealing my designs, hijacking my achievements and leaking my secrets. He had to pay the price, and his retribution was far from over. He would soon learn what happened to Xingtu Motors without my patent licenses. And under the weight of crushing debt, 3 days after the Shanghai Auto Show, an emergency shareholders meeting was convened at Xingtu Motors headquarters. I received an invitation because I still held the 12% original stake my father had left me, making me the company's second largest shareholder. I arrived at the meeting with Attorney Zhong. The conference room was packed and the atmosphere was suffocatingly tense. Every face was etched with anger and anxiety. Jiyu Jingchen sat at the head of the table. His hair had turned mostly grey and his face was haggard, his eyes bloodshot. The arrogance he once possessed had vanished. When I walked in, he snapped his head up, glaring at me with a look of pure venomous hatred. I ignored his gaze and took my seat. As soon as the moderator finished the opening remarks, the shareholders exploded. One veteran shareholder slammed a financial report onto the table and shouted at Jiyu Jingchen, "Jiyu Jingchen, give us an explanation. In just 6 months 90% of the company's market value has vanished. The stock is hitting the floor every day and is about to be delisted. What the hell have you done?" Another shareholder stood up, fuming. "And the 200 million renminbi in patent infringement damages. The court has ruled against us, and we have to pay Shinjiu 200 million. The company has no cash left. Banks are at our door every day, dealers are leaving in droves, and the factories have stopped. Tell us, how do you plan to fix this mess? And there's more, you leaked trade secrets and sold our next-gen designs to Hongqi. Now the company is under CSRC investigation and facing delisting. You destroyed this entire company for a woman. You must resign. Yes, resign as chairman and CEO immediately." The shareholders were in an uproar, their shouts for his resignation filling the room. Jiyu Jingchen slammed his fist on the table and stood up, shouting back, "Quiet, all of you. Resign. If I resign, who is going to fix this mess?" He pointed a shaking finger at the shareholders, gritting his teeth. "So what if we owe money? So what if the stock dropped? As long as we get the next flagship model to market, we can turn this around. I have the complete design package. Once that car launches, the company will be reborn." Just as he finished, the door opened. Attorney Zhong walked in, holding a formal legal notice, and walked straight up to Jiyu Jingchen. "Mr. Jiyu Jingchen, I am the legal representative for MS Shinjiu. This is a formal notice of termination of patent authorization, effective immediately. MS Shinjiu is terminating all patent licenses granted to Xingtu Motors, including all previously signed commercial licensing agreements." Zhong placed the notice in front of Jiyu Jingchen and continued, "Furthermore, I am officially notifying the shareholders that all 6 production models currently on sale by Xingtu Motors utilize 12 of MS Shinjiu's design patents. Since the authorization has been terminated, Xingtu must immediately cease the production and sale of all models. Failure to do so will result in MS Shinjiu seeking additional damages for every infringing vehicle sold at a rate of 3 times the retail price per unit." The room fell into a deathly silence. The shareholders stared at Zhong with expressions of total despair. Every model Xingtu sold relied on my patents. With the licenses revoked, they had to stop selling everything. Their factories would go dark. This meant Xingtu Motors had lost every single cent of its revenue stream. Their last lifeline had been cut. Jiyu Jingchen stared at the legal notice, his body trembling violently. He looked up at me, his eyes so red they looked like they might bleed. "Shinjiu, are you insane? You're a shareholder too. If the company goes bankrupt, what do you gain?" I looked at him calmly. "Jiyu Jingchen, Xingtu was my father's life's work. It was never meant to be a tool for you to please a woman or line your own pockets. You are the one who destroyed this company. You are the one who must answer for it." "I destroyed it." Jiyu Jingchen screamed like a madman. "If you hadn't fought me at every turn, resigning, terminating licenses, suing the company, Xingtu wouldn't be in this state. This is your fault, Shinjiu." "My fault?" I smiled. "Jiyu Jingchen, ask your own conscience. Who brought Xingtu from the brink of bankruptcy to the top of the industry? Without my designs and my patents, Xingtu is nothing. You enjoyed the wealth and fame my work brought you, only to turn around and throw it away on your white moonlight. You tried to steal my work to boost her career and sold my secrets to the competition. Did you never think this day would come?" I stood up and addressed the shareholders. "Ladies and gentlemen, the state Xingtu is in today is entirely Jiyu Jingchen's doing. He committed adultery, embezzled Randi funds for his mistress, and stole core trade secrets, leading to massive fines, regulatory investigations, and the threat of delisting. He must be held accountable." I paused for a beat. As the second largest shareholder, I formally propose the removal of Jiyu Jingchen from his positions as chairman and CEO and the termination of all his roles within the company. Furthermore, I propose that we sue him for the immense losses he has caused the company, pursuing both legal and financial restitution. The moment I finished, The shareholders began to shout in agreement. I second the motion. Remove Jiyu Jingchen. I agree. Sue him immediately and make him pay for what he's done. Vote now. The shareholders' meeting held the vote on the spot. It passed unanimously. Jiyu Jingchen was stripped of his chairmanship and CEO status, and all his positions within the company were terminated. Simultaneously, the board decided to file a lawsuit for the losses he caused and froze all company shares held in his name. Jiyu Jingchen stood paralyzed, staring at the results. His face turned ashen, and his legs gave out, leaving him slumped in his chair. He never imagined that the company he once controlled with an iron fist, Xingtu Motors, would ultimately cast him out. He had fallen from the clouds straight into hell. Two security guards entered and walked up to him. Mr. Jiyu, you are no longer an employee. Please leave the premises immediately. Jiyu Jingchen looked up at me, his eyes brimming with venom and madness. Shen Jiyu, he hissed, I won't let you get away with this. Even if I die, I'll take you down with me. I looked back at him, my voice cold. Jiyu Jingchen, worry about yourself. The police have already opened an investigation into your theft of trade secrets. You'll be behind bars soon enough. His face paled further, his body trembling. The guards grabbed him by the arms and dragged him out of the conference room. Once he was gone, the shareholders swarmed around me. President Shen, only you can save Xingtu now. Please, come back and take charge. That's right, President Shen. Xingtu was founded by your father. Only you can bring it back to life. We will follow your lead. I looked at them and spoke calmly. Xingtu was my father's life's work. I won't watch it collapse. However, the company faces delisting, massive damages, and a host of other issues. I need time to handle this. The shareholders nodded fervently. We're with you. Whatever you say goes. I nodded and said no more. I walked back to my former office as design director and looked out the window. My heart was still. 5 years. I had finally driven Jiyu Jingchen out of my father's company, but it wasn't enough. I still had to uncover the full truth behind my father's death and make Jiyu Jingchen pay the ultimate price. As for Jiyu Jingchen, shortly after being ousted, he discovered that his white moonlight, Suyu Mo, had cleared out the last of his personal assets and fled abroad. She had blocked all his contact info and vanished. For her, he had destroyed his marriage, his career, and his life, only to be discarded like trash by the woman he had pampered. Driven to desperation, he directed all his hatred toward me. He made a final, frantic decision. He would go to Europe to find me and end us both. He didn't realize that this journey would only highlight the staggering divide between us. We were no longer even in the same realm. A month after Jiyu Jingchen was expelled from Xingtu, I received a formal invitation from the BMW Group headquarters to serve as their global design director. Based in Munich, Germany, this was a historic first, the first Chinese global design director in BMW's century-long history, and the first female global design director among major global automakers. It was the ultimate recognition of my talent, the first time a Chinese designer stood at the very pinnacle of the industry. I accepted. After settling matters at home, I flew to Munich with Lin Wn and my team. BMW organized a grand signing ceremony, inviting executives from top automakers, titans of the design world and global media. On the day of the event, the hall was packed, and the ceremony was live-streamed worldwide. I stood backstage in a sleek black suit preparing to go on. Lin Wn ran in, looking anxious. President Shen, Jiyu Jingchen is here. He's outside causing a scene, demanding to see you. Security has him held back. I arched an eyebrow, not surprised in the least. He had tracked me down after all. I see, I said calmly. Tell security to keep a close eye on him. Don't let him disrupt the ceremony. We'll deal with him afterward. I straightened my blazer, took a deep breath and walked onto the stage to the sound of the moderator's introduction. Thunderous applause erupted and flashes from 1,000 cameras lit up the room. Oliver Zips, the CEO of BMW, stood on stage smiling. He shook my hand and addressed the crowd. Today marks a historic day for the BMW Group. We are honored to welcome the world-renowned design master, Ms. Shen Jiyu, as our global design director. Her talent and vision for the future of automotive design are truly admirable. Under her leadership, BMW design will enter a brand new era. I delivered my inaugural speech in fluent English. The industry titans and design masters in the audience listened intently, nodding in approval. After the speech, Mr. Zips and I signed the contract before the global media. The applause was Deafening and sustained. As I stepped off the stage, I was surrounded by reporters and industry leaders offering their congratulations. Suddenly, a commotion broke out at the entrance. Jiyu Jingchen had broken through security and was charging toward me like a madman. He wore a rumpled suit, his hair was a mess, and his face was covered in stubble. His bloodshot eyes screamed of exhaustion and insanity. He looked utterly out of place among the elegant guests. He lunged to grab my arm, screaming, "Shenjiyu, you're coming with me. How dare you stand here in glory? Everything you have I gave you. Without me you're nothing." Before his hand could touch me, BMW security slammed him to the ground. The guests looked on with confusion and disdain. I looked down at him, my expression blank. I felt nothing, not even anger. I told the security team calmly, "Please escort him out. Do not allow him to disturb the guests. Also call the police. He is trespassing and harassing me." "Understood, Director Shen," the security lead nodded. They hauled Jiyu Jingchen up and dragged him away. He struggled violently, screaming my name with desperate malice. "Shenjiyu, you bitch, I'll see you dead. I won't let you go." His screams faded as he was dragged out. The guests quickly returned to their conversations, treating the incident as a minor, forgettable distraction. To them, he was a clown. To the world, I was the queen of automotive design. The gap between us was now an unbridgeable chasm. After the ceremony, the German police informed me that Jiyu Jingchen had been detained for trespassing and harassment. Furthermore, because he was wanted for economic crimes in China, Interpol had issued a red notice for him. The German authorities would hold him pending extradition. A few days later, a defamation suit I filed against him in Germany also went to court. Before his arrest, he had posted wild accusations on social media, claiming my designs were plagiarized and that I had used inappropriate relationships to get the BMW job. The German court ruled in my favor immediately, ordering him to issue a public apology and pay damages. A global restraining order was issued, banning him from posting about me on any platform and keeping him at least 100 meters away from me at all times. Jiyu Jingchen was now a stray dog in Germany. He was a prisoner waiting for extradition in China. He was a wanted criminal in the design world. He was a laughingstock. Wealth, status, and reputation all gone. Meanwhile, I began my new life in Munich as global design director. I led the development of BMW's next generation of electric vehicles. I had become a true global icon. Jiyu Jingchen once thought I was nothing without him. He would never understand that my foundation wasn't the platform he gave me, it was the pen in my hand, the designs in my mind and the strength in my bones, and his nightmare was only beginning. He would soon realize that the atrocity he committed to seize Xingtu would be the very thing that sent him into the abyss. After being held in Germany for half a month, Jiyu Jingchen managed to get out on bail temporarily. However, he knew extradition was inevitable. He refused to give up. He sold everything of value he had left and obtained a forged passport through the black market. His plan was to fly from Paris Charles de Gaulle to Southeast Asia and find a country without an extradition treaty with China. He thought his plan was flawless. He didn't know that every move he made was under my control. The forger he contacted was an informant. I had placed his flight info, his route, his every step. I knew it all. The day before he left for Paris, I turned all his information over to Interpol, the French border police and customs. They set a net at the airport, waiting for him to walk right in. I also flew to Paris that day. Sitting in the VIP lounge at Charles de Gaulle, I watched the surveillance feed as Jiyu Jingchen, wearing a hat and mask, crept into the terminal. He kept his head down, trying to dodge the cameras, clutching his fake passport as he approached the check-in counter. "President Shen, he's here," Lin WN whispered, watching the screen. I sipped my coffee. "Notify the police, they can move in." On the screen, Jiyu Jingchen handed over the passport. The agent took one look and inconspicuously pressed the silent alarm. Seconds later, a dozen French officers and Interpol agents swarmed the counter. Jiyu Jingchen tried to bolt, but he was tackled and pinned to the floor. The click of handcuffs echoed as they read him his rights in English, informing him he was under arrest for forgery, illegal border crossing, and the crimes listed on his Interpol red notice. His face was pressed against the cold floor as he struggled in vain. The police recovered the fake passport and logs of his contact with human smugglers. As they marched him past the glass wall of the VIP lounge, he saw me. His eyes went red. He slammed his hands against the glass. Screaming my name in a frenzy of hatred and despair, I sat there unmoving and simply raised my coffee cup toward him in a silent, mocking toast. He lost all control then, lunging at the glass before being hauled away by the officers. Finally, Lin WN sighed. "He's not going anywhere now." I set the cup down. "No, he isn't. From the day he played a part in my father's death, this was his destiny." 3 days later, Interpol announced his capture. The news topped the charts in China with netizens celebrating his downfall. Xingtu's shareholders sent messages of gratitude, but I felt no surge of emotion. Capturing him was only the beginning. A week later, he was extradited. Upon landing in Shanghai, he was taken directly to the detention center. The next day, his lawyer contacted me. He said Jiyu Jingchen wanted to see me. He claimed to have a shattering secret about our hidden marriage, a secret he would trade for a letter of leniency. I laughed when I heard the news. A shattering secret. I had already uncovered the truth about my father's death. Whatever secret he thought he held was, to me, utterly worthless, but I agreed to meet him anyway. I wanted to go to the detention center and tell him the truth face to face. I wanted him to know exactly what kind of trap he'd been living in for the past 5 years. I wanted him to fall into utter, bottomless despair in his final moments. At the Shanghai Detention Center's visiting room, I saw Jiyu Jingchen through the thick glass, clad in a prison jumpsuit with a shaved head. He was sallow, gaunt, and looked like a shell of his former self. His eyes were dull, the spark of his once arrogant spirit completely extinguished. When I walked in, his head snapped up, a flicker of hope crossed his eyes, only to be instantly replaced by venomous resentment. He picked up the phone, staring at me with a voice as raspy as sandpaper. "Shinjiyu, you finally decided to show your face." I picked up my receiver and looked at him calmly, saying nothing. He let out a twisted, gruesome laugh. "What, are you here to gloat or just to see what you've turned me into?" "I'm not here to gloat," I said, enunciating every word. "I'm here because your lawyer said you had some earth-shattering secret to trade. Go ahead, I'm listening. I want to know what secret could possibly make you think I'd sign a settlement letter to help you walk free." Jiyu Jingchen's grin widened, a look of triumph settling into his eyes. He leaned in, lowering his voice into the phone. "Shinjiyu, we are legally married. 5 years of marriage, even if it was kept quiet, is still protected by law. Every cent you earned in those 5 years, the patent royalties, the BMW signing bonus, and your shares in Xingtu, that's all marital property. I'm entitled to half." He glared at me threateningly. "I've already instructed my lawyer to file for divorce and asset division. We're talking over $1 billion. If you sign that settlement and help me get a lighter sentence, I'll drop the suit. I'll walk away without a penny. Otherwise, even if I'm behind bars, I'll strip you of everything you worked for." He thought he had found my Achilles heel. He thought he could use marital property to strong-arm me. He had no idea that from the very first day we married, I had already blocked every exit. I couldn't help but laugh. Jiyu Jingchen's face darkened instantly. "What's so funny? You think I'm joking? Let me tell you, Shinjiyu, I know marriage law better than you do. Everything earned during the marriage is joint property. I have the right to half." "Is that so?" I arched an eyebrow and pulled 2 documents from my briefcase, pressing them against the glass so he could read them. Clearly, the first was a prenuptial agreement, notarized before our wedding. It clearly stated that all assets held before the marriage, patents, real estate, savings, equity, belonged to the individual, and that finances would remain separate after marriage. The second was a postnuptial property agreement. It explicitly stated that all salaries, bonuses, intellectual property income, and business earnings post-marriage were personal property, not joint assets. Each party was also solely responsible for their own debts. His signature was right there at the bottom, alongside the official notary stamp, valid and legally binding. Jiyu Jingchen's eyes went wide. His pupils shrinking in disbelief, he began to mumble, "Impossible, that's impossible. When did I sign a postnup? I don't remember this." "Of course you don't," I said coldly. "During our 2nd year of marriage, when Xingtu was applying for a bank loan, the bank required both spouses to sign a property agreement. You were too busy planning a vacation with Sue. You more to even look at what you were signing. You thought it was just a loan document. In reality it was this." Jiyu Jingchen went deathly pale, his entire body trembling so hard he nearly dropped the phone. He never imagined he had signed away his rights to my fortune years ago. His trump card was nothing more than a joke to me. I continued. Furthermore, I have a complete paper trail proving you spent years embezzling marital funds to give Suyu more cash, houses, and cars, totaling over 30 million. I also have evidence of your infidelity, every chat log, photo, and video. In a divorce suit, you're the party at fault. Not only will you get nothing, but you'll owe me for emotional distress, and those assets you gifted to Suyu more. I have the right to claw back every single one. I paused, locking eyes with him. Jiyu Jingchen, you think you're in a position to bargain, you aren't even in the game. Jiyu Jingchen finally snapped. He slammed his fists against the glass, screaming hysterically, "You set me up, Shinjiyu, you've been calculating this since day one, you bitch." Calculating? I smiled, my gaze turning ice cold. Jiyu Jingchen, that's not even the half of it. Did you really think I didn't know about the accident you orchestrated to seize control of Xingtu? Jiyu Jingchen froze, the madness vanished, replaced by a paralyzing raw terror. His lips quivered, struggling to form words. I don't know what you're talking about, don't you? I leaned in. 5 years ago my father's car crash wasn't an accident, it was you swapped his heart medication, causing him to have a seizure while driving. You thought you were so clever that nobody would ever find out, didn't you? The color drained from his face entirely. He sat there like he'd seen a ghost. He couldn't believe his darkest secret, the one he'd kept buried for 5 years, was out. You killed my father to buy Xingtu shares at a discount and steal his life's work. I didn't marry you because I loved you. I married you and stayed at Xingtu for 5 years just to find the truth and gather evidence of your crimes. Jiyu Jingchen, you thought you were 5 steps ahead, but you were never even on the board. From the day you killed my father, you walked right into my trap. Every move you made was exactly what I wanted. Jiyu Jingchen went completely ballistic. He lunged at the glass, screaming my name in a desperate guttural howl. The guards immediately rushed over, pinning him to his chair. He could do nothing but glare at me, his eyes bloodshot and wild. I hung up the phone and stood up. Jiyu Jingchen, you owe my father. You owe me and you owe Xingtu. I'm going to collect every last cent. Enjoy rotting while you wait for your final judgment. I turned and walked out without looking back. Behind me, his screams were eventually drowned out by the heavy doors. Outside, the sun was warm on my skin. For 5 years, a weight had crushed my chest. Finally, it was gone. My father's death was accounted for. Next came the final trial. I was going to make sure Jiyu Jingchen paid for his sins for the rest of his life. A month later, the Shanghai No. 1 Intermediate People's Court opened the trial for Jiyu Jingchen on charges of infringing trade secrets, bribery, and securities fraud. As the victim, I attended with a mountain of evidence. The gallery was packed with reporters, Xingtu shareholders, and my father's old friends. Jiyu Jingchen was led in, shackled and gaunt, looking like a dead man walking. The prosecution read the indictment, detailing his crimes with overwhelming evidence and calling for a strict sentence. Jiyu Jingchen's defense lawyer argued for leniency, claiming he was a first-time offender with a cooperative attitude. 2 hours into the debate, his lawyer was still desperately trying to mitigate the damages. That's when I, acting as the victim's legal representative, stood up. Your Honor, I addressed the judge. We have new, critical evidence to submit. This evidence proves that the defendant, Jiyu Jingchen, is also guilty of a much more serious crime, first-degree murder. The courtroom erupted. A wave of shock swept through the room as every eye turned toward me in stunned silence. From the defendant's dock, Jiyu Jingchen snapped his head up to look at me, his eyes bulging with raw terror and panic. The judge froze for a moment before nodding. New evidence is permitted. My lawyer immediately submitted the full chain of evidence: audio recordings, witness testimonies, hospital medication logs, forensic reports, and Jiyu Jingchen's own recorded confession. I picked up the microphone and stood tall in the courtroom, my voice steady and clear. Your Honor, 5 years ago the founder of Xingtu Motors, my father, Shenhong Yuan, died in a car accident following a sudden heart attack. The police ruled it an accident at the time. However, my father's death was no accident. It was a deliberate act of murder committed by the defendant, Jiyu Jingchen. I paused, locking eyes with the man in the dock. To seize control of Xingtu, Jiyu Jingchen swapped my father's heart medication with a drug that looked identical but had the exact opposite effect. This caused my father to suffer a fatal cardiac event while driving, leading to the crash. We have the hospital records and pharmacy logs proving the medication was tampered with. We have the written testimony of Jiyu Jingchen's former driver, who heard him admit to the swap. Most importantly, we have a recording of Jiyu Jingchen himself in a drunken state. He confessed the entire process of how he killed Shen Hongyuan to Su Yumor. As I spoke, I presented the evidence piece by piece, each one an irrefutable nail in his coffin. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence. Every gaze turned toward Jiyu Jingchen was filled with shock and loathing. He sat there trembling, his face as white as a sheet, muttering under his breath, "It wasn't me, I didn't do it, she forged it all. After killing my father," I continued, "Jiyu Jingchen immediately collaborated with outside capital to buy up Xingtu's minority shares at a discount, installing himself as chairman and stealing my father's life's work. I didn't marry you and stay at Xingtu for 5 years because I loved you. I did it to stay close to you, to uncover the truth and to gather every scrap of evidence of your crimes. You thought I divorced you because of Su Yumor. You're wrong. From the day you killed my father, I swore you would pay. Su Yumor was just an excuse to close the net, a minor interlude in my plan. You thought you were the one in control, that I couldn't survive without you or the company. In reality, you walked into my trap on our wedding day. Every step you took, stealing my designs to promote your muse, leaking trade secrets, you were just driving yourself into a dead end. Exactly as I predicted." As my voice faded, the courtroom remained deathly still. Everyone realized the truth. For 5 years, Jiyu Jingchen had been a mere pawn in a game he didn't even know he was playing. He thought he was the master. Instead, he had walked himself straight into hell. Jiyu Jingchen finally snapped. He lunged forward, pointing at me and screaming hysterically, "You lied to me, Shinjiyu, you lied to me for 5 years, you're a liar, I'll kill you." The bailiffs tackled him instantly, pinning him down and shouting for order. Forced back into his seat, his eyes were a mess of malice, despair, and regret. Finally, he buried his face in his hands and began to wail like a beaten dog. He finally understood that his greatest mistake wasn't just the crime, it was provoking me. The judge announced that due to the gravity of the new evidence, the trial would be adjourned and the case returned to the procuratorate for a formal murder investigation. As I walked out of the court, my father's old colleagues crowded around me. "Shiyu, thank you, your father can finally rest in peace." I nodded, my eyes stinging. "Dad, do you see, he's finally going to pay. I'll protect everything you built." 3 months later, the verdict was delivered. Jiyu Jingchen was found guilty of murder, infringement of trade secrets, bribery, and securities fraud. He was sentenced to life in prison, deprived of political rights for life, and had all personal assets confiscated. His appeal was later rejected. He would spend the rest of his days in a dark cell. Su Yumor was also sentenced to 3 years for her role in concealing the criminal proceeds, with the villains behind bars. I focused on 2 major milestones. First, as the global design director for the BMW Group, I led the world premiere of a new flagship electric model in Frankfurt. The hall was packed with over 200 media outlets broadcasting live. I stood on that stage in a white suit, the lead designer of a car that would redefine the industry. When the veil was lifted, the applause was deafening. The car exploded onto the market, breaking records with over 1 million orders in 24 hours. The media dubbed me the Queen of Automotive Design. At the end of the presentation, I announced the launch of a global foundation for female designers, pledging 20% of my personal income to support young women with dreams. The standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes. Halfway across the world in a Shanghai prison, Jiyu Jingchen sat in front of a small TV. He watched as I stood at the top of the world, bathed in light. The bun he was eating slipped from his hand and hit the floor. Seeing me reach heights he could never dream of, he broke down and sobbed. He finally realized what he had thrown away. He had discarded the one person who could have taken him to the top. He sent dozens of letters from prison, crying for forgiveness, claiming he was sorry, begging me to visit. My assistant destroyed them all without me ever opening a single one. Forgiveness, he didn't deserve it. A few cheap words couldn't erase a life stolen. The second milestone was the restructuring of Xingtu Motors. I returned to China with my team and saved the nearly bankrupt company. Taking over as chairman in my father's name, I injected my new designs and core technology into the brand. Xingtu didn't just return to the top tier of the EV industry, it went global. I fulfilled my father's dream at the new product launch. I told the crowd, Xingtu was born in China but it belongs to the world. We will show everyone the power of Chinese design. After the event, my assistant Lin WN smiled at me. "We did it, President Shin, you've settled the score and honored your father, you're a legend now." I looked out the window at the sun shining off the new cars. I just smiled. 5 years of endurance and planning had finally come to an end. Jiyu Jingchen is repenting in the dark. While I am standing on the summit, living in the light, my story is only just beginning.